So, I'm a 28-year-old woman, and this happened to me when I was 13. I'm an adult now, and still kind of traumatized. For a little context, at 13, I transferred schools because of lack of money. This school I went to was a cheaper private school because where I lived, the public ones kind of sucked. I didn't have any friends for at least the first couple of months. I started noticing this boy, Victor. He was always staring at me during classes, in the hallways by the window, and at lunch. It was an everyday thing, but I didn't care because as a kid, I only thought of stupid stuff like dolls or whatever. The girls in my class started saying that Victor had a crush on me, which creeped the hell out of me because he was 18. I was creeped out but still didn't care, as long as he didn't approach me or anything. But things escalated quickly. Victor would follow me home every day. Thankfully, I moved since then and he doesn't know where I live anymore. The most annoying thing, however, was that he constantly asked his friends to try to talk to me and try to convince me to go out with him and make out with him after school. These talks would usually take about 30 minutes of them trying hard to convince me to agree with it, while Victor was behind them watching the conversation like a freak. Obviously, I rejected him all the time, but being the nice guy that he said he was, he spread rumors about us making out anyway. Nobody believed him because he was such a weird guy and the whole school knew it. The final straw was when our school had a trip to a book fair. I was super excited. At this point, I had made a couple of friends. On our way to this fair, I was on the bus with my friend and Victor was on 3 seats behind us. I could feel his eyes on me the whole way. Out of nowhere, he came and asked for my friend's cell phone and she gave it to him. So stupid of her. He returns her cell phone not even 2 minutes later. She checked it and showed me he had taken a bunch of photos of me. I guess this was his way of saying that he already done this at some point. She got pissed and went to go talk to him. When she returned, she said the creepiest thing I've ever heard in my life. She said this with a very scared face. He said to me that when you least expect it, he will push you into a bathroom and hurt you today. The only thing that went through my mind was, what should I do now? I looked at him and he gave me a creepy smile. After this, I spent the whole day looking behind my back, not leaving the side of my teacher. She didn't understand why I didn't want to walk around at the fair. I was in alert mode the whole time, and thankfully nothing happened. When I came home, I cried in my room like a baby. This was at the end of the year, and I switched schools again. I told this to my mom last year and she was like, yeah, it happens. It happened to me too when I was your age. So shocked about how this is such a common thing. I'm now 28 and I still see Victor on the streets. He has followed me around a few times. I always walk in circles until I lose him. Sometimes he waits for me outside the stores or restaurants. Think about what would have happened to me at the book fair if I didn't have my teacher next to me the whole time. And I wondered if one day he'll do something or just keep up this creepy behavior. This is a long story and it's been over 5 years in the making. I've actually posted this story before, but there are some really good internet sleuths here on Reddit, and they were able to figure out ex-beauty queen's identity and mine too. I don't really care if I give them my identity, but I didn't want it to be on my actual account, so I deleted it a while back. The catalyst for me to repost it today on a throwaway is that it's cathartic. Last week, yet another court date for ex-beauty queen stalker came and went. We'd been expecting things to proceed with her entering a plea of guilty or not guilty, but no such luck. All we got was another vague reason as to why she's not ready and a new court date issued. Months from now. There have been many court dates since she has been arrested. It's been over 18 months since she's been arrested for her continued stalking and harassment, and she still wants to drag things on, seemingly to try and stay relevant in our lives. As an aside, the amount of court resources and taxpayers' money that's wasted is actually really astounding. Anyway, on to the story. To recap, my husband dated a beauty queen title holder of a well-known pageant before me. They broke up long before we met. She was a status quo blonde, very tall, knockout in her day in my opinion. This is somewhat important to the story, I guess, but while she was a dazzling pageant winner on the outside, on the inside, she could be charming and beautiful if she needed you, but mostly she treated people around her terribly, including my husband, and he eventually broke it off with her. But she never went away. She would continue to call and email repeatedly, even after my husband and I met. If anything, her calls increased. She would call over and over again, day and night. Even after my husband, then boyfriend, blocked her number. She would ask for money and threaten to go to the police, claiming he abused her if he didn't give it to her. He obviously did not give her money. This made her really upset. The threats increased and became more malicious, but when that didn't work, she would switch tactics and try sweetly asking him for help with certain projects that she was trying to get off the ground, or more accurately, have him do the work for her and she'd take the credit, with the promise that if he did just this one last thing for her, she would go away. He still didn't reply, so she would go back to being malicious. Any tactic for attention or for what she really wanted, money. My husband was terrified, because of course, while he never did anything to her, it would be her word over his, and he was terrified of ruining his reputation and career. We unfortunately ended up at an event she also attended. She had been waiting for us to arrive and had placed herself near the entrance of it. As we walked in, she stood across the room, looking me up and down, laughing and whispering into the ear of her date, making a point to try to make me uncomfortable. But that was okay. She was easily ignored until she ambushed me as I came out of the bathroom. She had clearly been waiting for a moment I was alone. She towered over me. She is very tall. I had no intention of having it out with her as I hurriedly walked to find my husband. She kept pace behind me, hunched over so she was at my level. I'm 5'5". Her head turned toward me. She was like a caricature of herself as she ambled beside me, smiling manically. "Where's your man?" she hissed in her heavy accent. Her eyes were black. She looked like she was out of a Tim Burton movie, hunched over with that crazy demonic smile. "Watch your back," she added, grinning. She liked to call me names like Pug because I own pugs, and I guess she thought this was an insult. What I didn't know then was, while I was in the bathroom, she had walked over to my husband and had thrown her arm around him while he was in mid-conversation with someone, and introduced herself to the man he was talking to as if she and my husband were together. My husband unwrapped himself from her clutches and told her to beat it. She then beelined and waited for me to come out of the washroom. We stopped going to the parties. The last time I ran into her was at a funeral for a mutual friend. As my husband, boyfriend at the time, was talking to the man's widow, I was talking to a friend and his wife. She walked right up and stood with us, joining us mid-conversation as if she were part of the group. It was unnerving but also just bizarre. It was a funeral and I didn't want a scene. I silently picked my wine glass off the bar and walked away, leaving her with the couple I had been speaking to and her staring at me with a smile on her face. All in all, annoying but manageable. However, the emails and calls never stopped. She would call my husband over and over, day and night, even though he had long blocked her number. She would drive by. I found my car keyed one night after I left it outside, but obviously I couldn't prove it was her. But enough was enough. My husband had a lawyer send a cease and desist. After the first, she called him from a private number. He answered and she said, "Hi, it's me," in a sing-song voice like they were the best of friends and he hadn't just sent her a lawyer's letter ordering her to stay away from him and his family. He just said nothing and hung up. Another cease and desist was sent. Then a third. Nothing would make her go away though. She did not actually think my husband was capable of not wanting to be with her, because, her beauty. Eventually, she got pissed that he was not giving in, so she decided to take this rage to the internet. I knew that she was absolutely checking out my social media, but I don't really use it much, so I didn't care. However, she created a fake Twitter account and tweeted my husband's name and said that he's a fraud, and tagged his colleagues, friends, investors, and family members. Every single person that she could think of to try and ruin his reputation and career. On New Year's Eve, she posted on my Instagram account at exactly 12:01 a.m. "Happy New Year's, Scrud." My social media settings were all put to private. We went to the police armed with the emails threatening to give her money or she would go to the police. She was charged with 2 counts of harassment and a restraining order was put into place. To our shock, the next day after her arrest, our phones were buzzing. This story has made front page news. Clearly a slow news day. Her day in court came right before COVID. We arrived at the courthouse and sat down. She walked in, and we were shocked by her appearance. Actually, shocked is an understatement. She was unrecognizable from her former self. Gone was the status quo dazzling blonde. She had apparently shaved her head and was wearing a short, ratty brown wig. She had gained about 80 pounds, give or take, and was now sort of hunched. With her height and new girth, she looked like a linebacker. To add to her new look, she wore a bulky brown men's overcoat and a scarf tied over her wig. My immediate thought was, her outside now matches her inside, but it was her eyes that I noticed the most. About a year earlier, we had shown a photo of her to our kids so that if she ever approached them, they knew to run. At the time, my son, who was young, commented that she had mean eyes. Maybe it was that she had changed so much physically overall, but her dark eyes had narrowed into deep black slits. As she scanned the courtroom and saw us in the court, she would turn around every so often to look back at us and glare. She would then whisper in her lawyer's ear and laugh as if she were having a grand time. She had a pair of big round cheap sunglasses that she would put on and take off intermittently. When she addressed the judge, she put them on and he asked her to remove them. He thought she was putting on a brave face and treating it all like a joke. But we were about to find out that getting arrested wouldn't slow her down. The restraining order didn't seem to faze her at all. If anything, it angered her more. From then on, every day and night, she would pose for multiple fake social media accounts, posting photos of myself and of my husband. She would put up my husband's photo with the caption, pedophile, or other terrible names that included racist and transphobic comments and captions. To give you a slight idea, she posted altered pictures of my husband, photoshopped to look like he was wearing heavy makeup, and referred to him as a pre-op transgender. She posted altered and unflattering photos of me. She called me old and ugly. Those were the G-rated ones. Listen, I am no beauty queen myself. The name calling, while obsessive and gross, wasn't what bothered me most. Although I'm not going to lie, seeing hundreds of photos of myself on her fake Twitter account calling me ugly and obsessively pointing out every single perceived flaw did succeed in getting me down at times. Why did I keep looking? Because it was like getting a glimpse into her unraveled mind, just in case it was a clue of what she was capable of or thinking of doing next. Because it wasn't her insulting posts that fazed me. What bothered me were the sinister captions. Keep an eye on your kids because I'll be watching. Why don't you plant some flowers in your front yard? Or be good to your kids because you never know what could happen. How was your Uber Eats order? She would post pictures of me with an arrow directed to my head, which I perceived to be a gun to my head. She posted pictures of my husband's workplace, which she was not allowed to be within 2 blocks of, in accordance with a restraining order, but the police said this could just be a picture she took from the internet. She posted Agatha Christie quotes like, "Every killer is usually someone you know well," or "Your end is near." Her Twitter profile banner picture was taken from a movie poster and said, "Stalker," like she was in on the joke. We called the police again, but they said there wasn't anything they could do since she didn't explicitly tag us. I took screenshots of everything. Many of her posts were nonsensical, but most were photos posted of us on this fake account, all altered with derogatory or ominous captions, but we couldn't get her shut down. I became anxious anytime my kids were outside shooting hoops in the driveway. My mother wouldn't take the baby out in the stroller, she was too scared. It affected all of our lives. Life became dramatic. The ex-beauty queen would taunt us with, "Catch me if you can." She posted close-ups of her dog's genitals or a piece of her dog's shit with my name beside it, the implication being obvious. It bothered me she now had a dog since I didn't think someone like her was capable of caring for anything living. Then the calls started back up, this time to our home line. Yes, we still have a home phone. She would say things like "bitch" and then hang up, or "karma will get you," and then weird chant-like calls as if she were reciting a spell. Sure enough, she posted photos of a pentagram and candles as some sort of altar in the caption, "Ring ring." Finally, just finally, the police asked us to come in and give video statements. We gave them a drive containing thousands of screenshots of posts she had made. They arrested her again and charged her with 2 more counts of criminal harassment. My husband was angry at this point, but as Mama Bear, I just wanted to get this over with. She mentioned the kids frequently and ominously many times in her online rants, also calling them rude names, which I won't repeat here because these are the things that upset me the most. The judge also issued a social media ban for her. By the time she was rearrested for the second time, her fake Twitter account, which was literally mostly insults or references to my family, had 16,000 tweets in a 3-month period. She has no followers, so they were just to herself. The porn sites I had been continuously being tagged on stopped. Things quieted down tremendously, but I still get follower requests that I believe are from her. At this point, we were all on edge. I kid you not, she was outside watching. I put nothing past her, as nothing is more dangerous than a desperate woman who has nothing to lose, which, by the way, was one of the quotes she posted. I don't know what's wrong with her. I believe from what I've researched, she's definitely a narcissist. Perhaps some other mental issues are at play here, but I can say she was a terrible person long before she decided to try and make our lives miserable. I wanted to mention that we heard from a reliable source that after my husband broke up with her, she allegedly became known to police for other reasons. While my husband dodged a bullet regarding her threats to go to the police, saying he abused her, apparently other men have not been so lucky. Since I can't post pictures, I'll leave you with one of her posts. One that may not make much sense, but to us, it was a statement to let us know she enjoys this drawn-out court process. Many of her posts are in her native language, so this is translated. Violent women and the cruelest never answer questions. They like to continue the misunderstanding indefinitely. So I seek to contact people only in order to torment them. My cruelty is my last attachment to the world. My fiance and I threw a dinner party one time to celebrate his mom completing chemo. I hired a caterer. We were expecting 25 friends and family, so it was more than the kitchenette of our single-story ranch house could handle. We'd also only just moved in, so we didn't have a lot of cooking staples. The caterer said he'd bring everything 75% done, but he needed to finish off some dishes in our kitchen. I told him that was fine as long as he was finished by 5 o'clock because the kitchen is centrally located and we'd prefer everyone be finished before the guests arrive, due to the intimate nature of the occasion. He said that would be fine. He arrives as scheduled at 12 p.m. We give him until 5, and the guests aren't even arriving until 6, so it's plenty of time. He smelled like actual dog shit, but his accent sounded European, so I thought maybe he just didn't believe in deodorant. It was more than a sweat smell, though. It smelled like a sun-baked diaper, and that made me uneasy because he was going to be preparing food for sick people and young kids. I just made sure he washed his hands and then left him to his own devices, worrying that I was being presumptuous. Throughout the entire process, he keeps pulling me aside to ask me questions and have me taste things. I was super busy because my husband had to work during the day and pick up the surprise guest right after, so setting up the deck, decorating, putting together the slideshow equipment, coordinating the surprise guest. We flew in her sister and I had to make sure she got an Uber at the airport and her hotel had worked out, etc. And just a million other little details. So every 10 minutes being asked things like, do you prefer this paprika or without? With is fine, whatever you think. Taste it to be sure. That was getting old. When he was still there at 5:45 after 2 gentle reminders, I flat out told him I needed him completely out by 6 no matter what. He apologized and said there had been a delay because our oven wouldn't stay up to temperature. I'd never had a problem with our oven, but I figured he's the professional, maybe it was a subtle problem. A little before 6 rolls around, a few of our friends start trickling in. I decide to tell him whatever's done is done and whatever isn't, he should just put in the fridge. But he's nowhere to be found. I go out on the deck to ask my friends if they'd seen him, and he's out there. Alcoholic beverage in hand, out of his chef whites, and now in a t-shirt and jeans, mingling with my friends. I walked out just in time for him to introduce himself to my cousin-in-law as a good friend of mine. Nope, too weird for me. I met him in person for the first time barely 6 hours ago. I told him he needed to leave, now. So he goes inside and gets his bag and makes a beeline for my bedroom. I'm taken aback. I say, "Excuse me, where are you going?" And he says, "To change." So first of all, we have a guest bathroom clearly visible. Second, why can't he wear a t-shirt and jeans home? I tell him I'm not comfortable with him going in my room, but he insists that it'll only be a second, and goes in and shuts the door, and locks it. I couldn't even get a word out before he went in, and I felt helpless. I was going outside to ask one of my friends to help me usher him out, but at that point, my fiance got there with my aunt-in-law. I had to explain the situation to him, nearly in tears at that point, and he was like, "What? He went in the bedroom? Why?" So we pounded on the door, and the caterer came out, still in a t-shirt and jeans, and my fiance said, "You shouldn't be in there, you need to leave." And the caterer said, "Excuse me, but this is not your house. It's not up to you to decide." And my 6'4", 260-pound fiance tells him, "Yes, actually, it is his house." He puts a hand on his back and guides him to the door. The caterer said, "I thought Frantic Sledder lived here." And he says, "Yes, my fiance lives here with me." And the guy goes nuts. He turns to me and screams, "You lied to me, you bitch." I have no clue what he's talking about. He starts yelling about how I led him on and calling me a bitch some more. I don't know who he thought the man in the pictures with me around the house was. So my fiance says, "No way, you're not talking that way in my house. Find the door." And the caterer goes in the kitchen and starts throwing the trays of food out of the refrigerator and on the floor. At that point, my fiance realized two of his brothers, both currently offensive linemen at the college level, had come in and were on the deck. He signaled to them, and they came inside, and he basically said, "This guy is harassing Frantic Sledder." Since they're a family of all boys and my fiance is the first to get married, they don't get to flex their protective muscles too often and jumped at the chance to toss this guy out. The party then went on as planned, but I insisted we just order pizza and throw out all the food he made. My fiance and friends kept saying, "Isn't that a bit much?" But I was insistent. We went out late drinking with his brothers and got home around 3:30 a.m. and passed out in our room. Around 5 o'clock a.m., I was woken up by the sound of the door opening. I figure either we forgot to lock the door in our drunken stupor and it blew open, or one of his family forgot their keys or something in the house and didn't want to wake us. His parents and his local brother have a key, but his parents never ever let themselves in when they know we're home. And his brother had even more than we did and was definitely not awake and driving around at 5 a.m. It wasn't nearly windy enough for the door to have blown open. It had been tranquil all night. So I wake up my fiance and whisper, "Someone just came in the house." And he said the same thing. Probably my brother left his wallet or something. I figure I'm being paranoid and try to put it to rest when I hear a loud crash sound. With that, my fiance was up and on his feet in one movement. He told me to lock myself in the closet and call 911 while he went and looked around. As I was pulling out my phone, we hear in that distinct accent, "Frantic Sledder? Hello?" And I realize it's just this insane caterer. I'm not worried about this guy physically overpowering my fiance, or me for that matter, so I charge right out there. The guy is shirtless and clearly on something. He's taking the pictures that are just of me off the wall and holding several in his arms already. He lunges towards me when he sees me. My fiance gets between me and him, and I call 911. We tell him that the cops have been called and it's in his best interest to get off the property. The caterer says, "No, I have to make sure Frantic Sledder is okay." And I say, "What? Why wouldn't I be okay?" And my fiance rightfully says not to engage with him and to feed into it. My fiance stays between me and him while I climb out a window. He watches as the caterer throws photos of us on the floor. Fiance didn't want to subdue or touch him in any way, so the caterer couldn't make any assault claims. He's begun to destroy our kitchen at this point, and when the cops come in, he has a butcher knife. My fiance considered going for the gun safe when he first got the knife, since we live in a stand your ground state, but he decided the situation was hectic enough without introducing a firearm. The caterer doesn't obey police orders to drop his weapon, and he says he isn't leaving without me, so they tase him. It's lucky for him he only got tased and he didn't antagonize my husband into squashing him. As he's let out in cuffs, he's now shouting how he and I are in love and says I chose a macho thug over a sweet, sensitive artist like him and all women are whores, etc., etc. He continues on this tirade the entire time. The police are reading him his rights. The police ask us to do an inventory of the house and see if anything's missing or damaged besides what we witnessed him do. We go around and there's nothing. But then I remember he was in our room yesterday and go through the room. All my panties from the dirty laundry hamper were gone and my vibrator had been moved from where I keep it. We were so freaked out in the aftermath that we replaced all our kitchenware and toothbrushes, sent our sheets to be professionally cleaned, and had a cleaning crew do a deep clean of the whole house. So glad we decided not to serve the food to our guests and my fiance's medically fragile mother. He sent me a letter from prison that, thankfully, my husband intercepted, because I was still recovering from the whole thing. We gave it to the police, who helped us get issued a no-contact order. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison 5 years ago, so he's out by now. When I was about 6 years old, around 2004, my mom started taking my sister and me to Dr. Daniel's pediatric dental office. The dental center was located inside a giant yellow mansion that also doubled as Dr. Daniel's house. It was honestly gorgeous. When I first started going to the dentist, I was extremely shy and actually suffered from selective mutism and had a lot of autistic-like tendencies. Needless to say, I relied heavily on my mother's comfort and for someone to give me a voice because it was extremely anxiety-inducing for me to talk to strangers, especially men for some reason. When my sister and I got called in from the waiting room, my mom followed us to the office until she was told by the doctor that parents were not allowed to be with their children as it taught kids independence, to which my mom complied. Once in there, he immediately separated my sister and me, and in reaction to that, I cried because I felt scared. Dr. Daniels did not like crying, so he grabbed me and put his hands over my mouth and nose, shook me, and aggressively warned me that if I continued to cry and scare the other kids, he would make my situation a lot worse. Obviously, this scared me even more, so I started to cry again. Dr. Daniels had enough and took me into his house, part of the dentist's office, where he screamed at me again, grabbed me by the neck, and shoved me. His hygienist, Judy, came over and told me if I continued to cry, she would spank me so hard I wouldn't know what had hit me. Afterward, he gave me a juice concoction and left me alone in his house for about 5 minutes, until he took me back into the dental office and did work on my teeth. I guess I just instinctively knew that if I wanted to survive, I just had to act like I was not terrified and hold back the tears. All I wanted was my mommy. After the first appointment, my sister and I told my mom that we were scared of the dentist and that he was a mean man, but she just took it as me being an anxious child, so we continued to see him. Each visit was just as terrifying. Every time we pulled into the mansion, my heart just melted away inside my chest. I was so scared. It was no longer pretty to look at. Every time we went to the dentist, Dr. Daniels, or the tooth man as he called himself, always had us have heavy dental work procedures done. We had seals done on several baby teeth and plenty of teeth removed, some with his fingers with no regard to pain level at all. And often when having a tooth removal or seals done, your mouth had to be opened up with a retractor. He would leave us there with the retractor on for about 45 minutes or so before he came to work on our teeth. Sometimes he would eat his lunch while we sat there with our mouths open. Probably one of the worst pains I've ever felt in my life. I remember one time when I was about in 3rd grade. I had been leaning down on the chair waiting the retractor on for an hour. I was in so much pain I couldn't take it. I sat up on the chair and tried to scream and cry as loud as I could. Dr. Daniels came rushing over, angry as could be, took my retractors off, and then took me back into his house part again, where he screamed at me for being a big baby and scaring all the other kids. I was sad because I hadn't cried in so long. He then took me back to the dental chair and then pinned me down to my seat in a straitjacket. He put my retractors back on and said that I would have to wait longer because I caused such a scene. All I could do was shed silent tears and drool everywhere, and I couldn't even wipe it because he locked up my arms. Afterward, my mouth would become so swollen and filled with rashes. It hurt to talk for days. It would leave bruises and swells as soon as I left his chair. He would often tell my mother I was a difficult patient if I so much as winced at his torture. Once he removed 6 of my teeth at once and I could barely eat. While he ripped out teeth, he would often sing songs. It was so Sweeney Todd-like. When I was in 7th grade, I started getting some new braces, and we started seeing an orthodontist. Not long after that, we stopped seeing Dr. Dan and started seeing a new dentist who was actually nice. I had never known that getting your teeth cleaned out didn't have to feel like going through a saw trap. I think my mom took us out of Dr. Dan's practice when the orthodontist looked at our dental records and saw a lot of unnecessary procedures being done on our mouths. Not long ago, I was having a conversation with a friend about our childhood fears, and instantly, my mind went to the tooth man. Curious, I googled him to see what happened to him, and to my happiness, the practice was shut down. Also, left under his name was a Yelp page that was still up. The page was filled with numerous one-star reviews from former patients that were once abused as kids in his office, using the page as an outlet to express their trauma. I started to cry because their experiences were so close and some identical to what I went through when I was a kid. It was so sad, but at the same time really validating to know that I was not alone. A lot of the procedures we went through were just a scam for him to collect money off our parents' insurance. And now that I think about it, he probably was so adamant on us not crying and screaming for help because he didn't want parents to hear and come and see what was going on. I shake thinking about this. I really pray that he hasn't opened up another practice somewhere else. I know it's hard not to blame parents in this situation, but the truth is, this man was a swift abuser. For every bruise and swell we had, he would have dental explanations that would make the parents feel stupid for asking. He was an authority figure. I don't blame my mom for not believing us. She knew he was firm, but probably thought we were confusing firmness with meanness. To be honest, even writing this, the torture was so wild it actually sounds made up. She eventually did come around. She's not alone, as there were hundreds and hundreds of parents that were duped and deceived by him. At my old job, 2 of my coworkers and I had to go on a work trip. One of them was a man and the other was a Muslim woman who wore a hijab. I know, why is that relevant? Just bear with me. Everything went well at first. We just did what we were there to do. The first night I was really tired, so when my coworkers invited me to go to dinner, I turned them down and went back to my hotel room. The next day, my male coworker was acting kind of quiet and insisted I sit in the front of the car instead of the back. Weird, but I didn't think too much of it. After our shift, my female coworker invited us to have some drinks in her room. I thought, why not? Just a couple of beers wouldn't hurt. At first, everything was fine. We drank, talked, and had fun. Then all of a sudden, she started hitting on the male coworker, telling him that he should remove his shirt. Mind you, he's happily married and so is she. I guess he got uncomfortable and told us he was going to bed. Before anyone says I should have said something. Maybe, but both of them are much older than me and this was my first job. I thought they were flirting in some weird way. Since I'm kind of awkward and didn't want her to think I wouldn't hang out alone with her, I stayed. Huge mistake. Up until then, her behavior towards me wasn't all that alarming. She started showing me pictures of her kids and family, but then she pulled up the Instagram page of some model. Not many followers, but obviously a physically attractive guy. She told me they were having an affair and that she would soon be divorcing her husband to run away with this man. Her demeanor completely changed. She had those crazy eyes now. Now, without sounding too mean, let's just say she wasn't exactly physically attractive. So I thought, what the hell? But I didn't say anything. Just kind of nodded along because WTF. Anyways, I figured she was just trying to impress me or something, so no major alarm bells yet. But then she started showing me paparazzi style pictures of him. Pics that she'd clearly taken without his knowledge. Pictures of where he worked, his friends, his family, and more stalker shit. I felt sick to my stomach. You know that feeling when something is just wrong, like you know you're in danger and need to get out. She had this weird look in her eyes. Then out of nowhere, she took off her hijab and she only had a few strands of hair. Lots of bald spots, like something out of a horror movie, with that crazy look in her eyes. It was too much. I swear, I wish I was making it up. Y'all, my stomach dropped. Every part of me was screaming to run, so I told her I was getting kind of tired and stood up to leave. She just said okay in this weird flat tone. The next day, she acted completely normal. I later talked to the male coworker and asked him why he had seemed so tense after being alone with her. He just said that she made a move on him. Let's just say I won't be ignoring my gut feeling ever again. Hello. I, 27 female, am married to my husband, 31 male, and we have 2 children. Fake names. Isaac, 8 male from my first marriage, and Tiana, with my now husband, 5 female. I'm very distraught right now because I've been seeing this woman almost everywhere I go. And I have no idea if this is happening by coincidence, and I'm trying to be as calm as I write this. I'm also not great with English, as it's not my initial language. The whole situation started somewhere around May 2022 when I and Isaac were at the local park, just doing our own thing. My son was just playing with some other child at the monkey bars when I saw this woman approach me. She had red hair. Pretty sure it was natural, and her face seemed tear-stained. I became concerned as I thought she was crying. I proceeded to ask her what was wrong, and if she was alright, but she kept staring at my son. The more she looked at him, the more she cried. Then all of a sudden, she sprints to him, running and screaming, "Michael!" She kept calling him that, and it freaked me out. I mean, she was running to my kid and calling him a different name. My son and the other child got scared, and I approached them before she did, as I was faster. I then screamed at her to get lost, but she just stood there as I held my son, and she seemed pretty enraged. She then muttered some things, but I could not hear her as she stomped away. The other child's father and I talked for a bit, and he seemed alarmed by what happened. He predicted that she was probably a grieving mother and that my son looked like the child she lost. I was still disturbed and took my son home. Since then, I have been afraid to take any of my children to any public areas, despite my husband's reassurance. Skip to June 2nd, 2022. I get a call from my school stating that a woman, who was a new volunteer for lunch duty, kept mentioning that my son was her Mikey Bear and that she had been looking for him for years. They told me that another volunteer who had been working with her reported this. I was scared as hell, and I acted immediately by signing my kids out for the day. When I called the school the next day, I was informed she was no longer there, so I became pretty freaked out. Skip to last week, July 13th, 2022. It was Tiana's 5th birthday, and we decided to host it at a park in my in-laws' hometown. Everything went well, although I was paranoid. It was then somewhere around 9 p.m. when we began tidying up, and as I looked at many oak trees behind, I could have sworn I saw her. I screamed at the top of my lungs and started chasing after her, but she somehow got away. Ever since then, I have not seen her, but I feel like this is not the end of it. I made this friend on Reddit, Carl. I suppose it's risky posting this because Carl could still be on here, but I actually don't care. This is a new account anyways. I met Carl because we frequented the same subreddits and always bumped into each other in threads. I used to be an active Redditor, now I'm just a lurker. Carl private messaged me drunk one night saying he needed a friend but had no one else to talk to, that he needed to vent about some shit in his life. I obliged and we became friends. Then we became pen pals. We just email every day or message on Discord. We talked about all kinds of stuff. We vented a lot about our lives and personal situations. As far as I knew, Carl was a couple of years older than me, originally from Russia but living in Colorado, and had a child and a girlfriend. He posted pictures of himself on various subreddits and also on the genealogy subreddit with his DNA results. This is important later. Carl started getting mad if I didn't reply quickly enough and acting weird. Other than that, things were fine. He loves drama and loved talking shit about people, so we would do that a lot. I also noticed he was extremely paranoid about many things, but I didn't take it too seriously. I made a subreddit based on 2007 Live Journal where we basically shit posted and we'd post stories every day. This other person joined us, John, who apparently was already online friends with Carl. They claimed they went to the same high school and randomly found each other on Reddit. It had been about a year of friendship at this point. I noticed that some of Carl's stories weren't adding up, and neither were John's. Something seemed a little off, but I didn't know what. We continued being friends. I got very close to Carl and John. However, I lied a little bit to them. I didn't give my real name. I said I live in Wyoming even though I don't. I looked up information about a city in Wyoming to claim that I lived there. Other than that, everything I told them was true. I was just concerned about privacy. For some reason, I didn't want them to know exact names and details. Carl was creepy sometimes because he would look at Reddit or this other website to see shit that I posted and then delete it and ask me why I deleted it. I got increasingly suspicious. I sent a link to a Facebook meme to Carl and John. However, you could only see the meme if you joined the private group. John ended up joining the group and I found his real Facebook. I found out he lived in New Hampshire, not Colorado. I messaged him and asked him if he really went to school with Carl. He claimed he did. I asked him not to tell Carl, but apparently he told Carl I did this. I forget exactly how this went down, but I sent a picture of an art piece I did to Carl. In the background was my cat, with her tag visible. Carl blew up the photo and zoomed in, saw my mother's phone number on the tag, used co.ag to find her, and then found her Facebook, then found me. This is part of why I deleted Facebook. Carl then confronted me, saying he knows I don't live in Wyoming. He knows my name and address from looking up my mom in Spokane. He asked why I lied and tried to guilt trip me for lying to him. He said tracking me down was revenge for trying to track John down, but later claimed the revenge thing was a joke. I was creeped out, but I continued being friends with him. I tried asking if he wanted to Skype or talk on the phone since it had been so long and we'd never tried that. He made up excuses as to why he couldn't. One night he eventually broke down and said, "I have something to tell you." It took days of prying to get him to actually tell me. He finally told me that his name is not Carl. He's not from Colorado. He has a kid, but she's older than 3, like he said before. That the pictures were not of him. That most details about his life were fake. Most importantly, he's not even Russian, so the DNA test posts were fabricated. I'm not even sure whose they were in that case. And John, he didn't go to Carl's school. He and Carl met on Reddit, and they never knew each other in real life. For whatever reason, John lied to me for Carl. John also helped Carl blow up my photo in order to track me down. John's real name was John, and that was indeed his real Facebook I found, but Carl would not budge. He would not admit to who he really was. Carl started joking that he knew everything about me, but I knew nothing about him, that he was going to message my girlfriend or mother and tell them some lies about me. Immature jokes, not serious blackmail. I eventually ghosted him, and as far as I know, he never messaged any of my family or girlfriend. He never shipped anything to my house. We just never spoke again. Creepy encounter because I just think it's creepy as hell that some stranger out there knows all about me, but I know nothing about them. I'll never know who Carl really was. His original Reddit account has been inactive for a year. This happened about 15 years ago. So, my buddies and I went fish camping at a pretty remote lake off of a 4x4 trail about 2 hours from home. There were 4 of us, all men, with me being the smallest at 195 pounds. Important later. The camping spot has great fishing as it has a nice deep spot with lots of trout right next to it, but the campground itself is rough. It is on the side of a steep hill with barely enough room for tents and a small fire ring. It is accessible by a rough, steep, winding 100-yard trail from where you park your 4x4 above the camp. We had a great day drinking beers and catching our limits of nice-sized trout. After it got dark, we made a small fire and just bullshitted the night away. It was a great time. Suddenly, there was somebody shining a blinding light in our eyes from about 10 to 20 yards away. We didn't hear this person approach at all. The person announced himself as the sheriff. One of my friends asked, "Are you our county's named sheriff?" The stranger didn't respond to the question. Instead, he shined a light into each of our faces. Then said, "Have a good night," and then walked off. We sat there dumbfounded, asking each other, what the hell was that about? After a minute or two, curiosity eventually got the better of me, so I lit up this person with my stupidly powerful flashlight. He was about 50 to 60 yards away at this point, right before a crest and bend of the trail, right before he was out of sight. We all saw it. It was just some dude in a flannel shirt and jeans, I said. "That's not a sheriff." He must have heard me, as you could see him start moving quickly for a second before he was out of sight. A few moments later, we heard an engine start, and that was that. Strange we didn't hear the vehicle earlier, but I attribute that to being drunk and loud. Now, what makes this kind of scary is, what if it wasn't 4 big dudes he approached? What if it was a single person or a couple? What would he intend to do? Should we have chased after this person? Debatable. Should we have reported this to the actual sheriff's department? Absolutely, but sadly we never did. My name is Ben and I live in Australia. In the southeast of Australia lies the state of Victoria. And in that state lies the high country, an extremely vast and remote expanse of alpine mountains and valleys that's largely only accessible by four-wheel drive and can take days to get in and out of. The place is popular for riding, deer hunters, and hikers. We four-wheel drive, and this was the destination chosen to go camping for a few days with my partner, Jess and me, some time away from the world beyond the reach of mobile phones. The four-wheel drive was loaded up, lists double-checked, vehicle maintenance done, fuel loaded onto the roof racks, and the police station closest to our destination notified of our trip. It's common for people to notify them as a safety measure, especially when not traveling in a convoy. Again, very remote, and off we went. We were headed to a place called the Wanangata Valley, a remote valley deep in the high country, a huge amphitheater-type valley with alpine mountains, rising high in every direction and a river running along the valley floor. Towards the end of the first full day of driving, we finally made our way down the last track for the day, skirting the ridge and arriving at the valley floor as the sun dips below the mountains. We found a secluded spot to pitch our tent, nestled in amongst the eucalypt trees by the riverbank. It was midweek and off-season, so we were the only ones in the valley that we knew of. After setting up camp and having a meal by the fire as the sun went down, we snuggled together on our sleeping bags and, in short order, we decided to hit the hay. At some point in the night, I woke to a loud noise. I wasn't quite sure what I heard, so from inside our tent I listened. Nothing. I must be going mad. No sooner had I thought it than I heard another noise. It sounded like something falling off our camp table and hitting the ground. I put it down to possums or wombats frolicking about, common in the area and nothing to worry about. Should have packed up after dinner, I thought, and went back to sleep. Sunrise came and we slowly woke up. Needing to pee, I opened the tent and jumped out. Looking around, something just came over me. A chill. It wasn't the way we left it. Instead of seeing two chairs together by the fire where we were sitting, one of them was by the table, and on the table was a loaf of bread that I'd swear I packed away again the night before. I walked over to the table to inspect it. A half-eaten piece of bread was sitting there, with the very obvious chomp marks taken out of it. I flung the tent open and asked, "Were you up before me? And did you have some bread?" No was the answer. Jess got up and together we went through all of our stuff. Nothing was missing. As we went to check the four-wheel drive, I noticed the footprints. There was a bunch of them around the front of the car where the hood was. Most of the camp was covered in grass. This was one of only a few spots that was just dirt. Had someone tried to open it? Very distinct footprints, not mine or my partner's. Perhaps they'd already been there. These camping spots are used intermittently, and obviously we weren't looking at the ground when we arrived the night before with the sun setting. I don't think either of us wanted to actually admit what we were both thinking, that someone had been creeping about our campsite in the night, far from civilization. We discussed if a possum could have made the bite marks, argued about if one of us had left the bread out, and eventually discussed moving on and camping somewhere else. After much deliberation, we decided to stay. I had the rifle in the four-wheel drive, which I guess gave me an overinflated sense of safety, which, in hindsight, was a very poor choice. As the day rolled on, the sun shining and with nothing eventful happening, I decided to walk across the valley floor, an open field of subalpine grassland, about 800 meters to an old ruin of an isolated homestead, built by settlers who ran cattle in the valley some 100 years ago. It's steeped in mystery. There's an old unsolved multiple murder from 1917 that always captivates people. I read the plaque, took some photos, and started wandering back to camp. As I neared the halfway mark back to camp, I noticed Jess walking across the field towards me. Must have gotten bored, I thought. As she approached, it was clear she was in a panic. Immediately, she started to tell me how she went down to the riverbank to wash the pots and pans and, as she looked up, saw someone over on the other side of the river, watching her from deep in the bush, or forest. I had no reason whatsoever not to believe her. I asked what he looked like and got told. An old man. 70s or thereabouts, scraggly looking and in old tattered clothes. Apparently, the second she looked up, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the forest. I couldn't comprehend it. How was anyone out there without a four-wheel drive or a dirt bike, and how would anyone get to that side of the bank without first crossing over from our side? There are days worth of damn near impossible to walk through bush on the other side just to get to where my partner saw him. We decided to jump in the four-wheel drive and drive along the length of the valley, checking the dozen or so riverside camping spots as we went. I wanted to spot a camp, have my partner ID the guy, and make sure he wasn't creeping, with our theory being that he may have been a hunter off in the bush after a deer. After making our way up and down the valley and not seeing anything, we drove back to camp at a loss to explain anything. As the sun started to set, and with my partner and I quite shaken, I grabbed the rifle and sat it next to us as we cooked dinner and chatted, having a few drinks to settle the nerves. Had we been spooked? Was it just that there's a lot of mystery surrounding the valley and the Homestead murders? We talked a bit and settled into a good foot warming in front of the fire. At some point, Jess needed to go to the toilet. I was asked to come with her to the spot behind a tree where we placed the portable toilet, about 50 meters from camp. Considering everything that had gone on, it was a no-brainer. Jess did her business, and we turned around and came around the side of the tree, and that's when we saw him. Standing at our camp, about a meter from the rifle I had sitting against the table, was a man. Old, check. Scraggly looking, check. Tattered old clothes, check. Jess squeezed my arm so hard I thought it was going to come off. Everything about her body language screamed, this is the same man. As we got closer, I could make out more odd things about him. He had part of a deer antler in his hand that looked like he had been whittling away at it, and what looked like antler pieces carved to plug large holes in his ears, like stretchers but made of bone. The same goes for the bone-looking buttons on his ratty old coat. He wore old leather shoes that looked homemade. "Good day, mate," he said. "Shit, mate. You gave us a heart attack," I said, officially shitting bricks. "Where have you come from, mate? Everything alright?" "Just over yonder. You lot aren't hunting around here, are you?" Looking directly at the rifle. "We might. Yeah, why?" "There's no hunting around here. Not enough deer as it is." "Well, we hadn't decided on it. We're probably packing up anyway," I said as I edged my way towards the rifle. "I should put this away anyway. Didn't mean to spook you, mate," I said, looking for an excuse to get that rifle into my hands. "It's all good. Guns don't spook me," he said. I didn't imagine they would. I picked the rifle up by the barrel and held it like a walking stick in an attempt to be non-confrontational, breathing a sigh of relief. "No offense, but you caught us a bit by surprise. You've got to be the only one we've seen since we got here." "Yeah, I saw you come in last night." "I frickin' bet you did," I thought. "I've been coming up here for 40 years. Beautiful spot, isn't it? Takes a bit to get down into the valley, hey?" "Yeah, mate. Look, no offense, but we're going to hit the sack soon. Do you need a lift back to your camp?" "No, all good. Just out for a wander before I tuck in for the night. Saw the fire and thought I'd say good day. Anyway, I'd better be on my way." And with that, he turned and walked off, parallel to the river into the dark, no torch. That was officially enough to spook us beyond any ability to calm down, and we decided to pack up in the dark and head out, even if driving in the dark was a monumentally stupid idea in this part of the high country. We got into the four-wheel drive and drove out, taking us along the valley floor. We didn't see a single fire, a camp, a vehicle, or anything. We kept on driving. Halfway home, Jess, bored from the drive, flipped on the camera. No memory card. After getting home and telling a few people what happened, a friend's dad, an avid bushman himself, was the one to officially freak us the hell out. "Oh, you met the Button Man." "The what now?" I said. "The Button Man. He's an old bushman who goes out into the high country for months at a time, hunts with a spear, appears out of nowhere, scares people, and has buttons made out of bone. There's a heap of people gone missing up that way. The cops keep looking but can't find a single trace. Campers, hikers. One camp was found burnt to the ground and a car left abandoned. They can't find any evidence at all. A quick Google search confirmed it. The missing people, the button man, and the lack of evidence. Police set out into the bush and found his camp, spoke with the man, but have nothing else to go on. I, 20 female, recently moved into a new apartment with my boyfriend, who works away for long periods of time. An older man, 50, started to become friendly with me, knowing I was new to the complex. I made the mistake of telling him I live with my partner, but he's away for work for a while. Almost every day after that, he came knocking on my door and waiting if I didn't answer. He would leave after 5 minutes of knocking with no answer. One time I was out in the common grass area playing with my brother, who was only 2 years old, that I would occasionally have over. I saw him coming my way and quickly picked my brother up. The man started making conversation, asking about my brother, and literally tried to grab him out of my arms. I held on to my brother tight and pulled away, and as he started to cry, I made an excuse that I have to go feed him and walked away. That was the last time I went near that man with my brother. I'm extremely bad with confrontation, as you can tell. A few days later, I heard a knock at my door and opened it without thinking. He walked straight past me into my apartment without even saying a single word, just smiling. I asked him if he was doing okay. He said, "I'm good, just wanted to see what your place looked like from the inside." I started walking into every room. He checked all my windows and commented, So all your windows have bars on them except the bathroom." I nervously laughed and said, "Yeah, I guess they do." I didn't know what to do, so I walked out into the front garden, hoping he would follow me out of the apartment to try to talk to me. I just wanted him out, but was scared to anger him. I could tell he didn't seem like he was right in the head. Once he came out the front, I closed my door and said, "I have to go to the shop now. Sorry, it's going to close soon," and walked off. That night, while hanging my washing out, another neighbor introduced herself, 34 female. I told her what happened and asked if she knew the man. Apparently, he had been doing the exact same things to her. She told her partner that this creepy neighbor was doing the same things to a young girl, me, and that was his last straw. He ended up going and talking to the older man. After that, the older man only tried one more time that I know of to knock on my door, which I hid in my kitchen for 10 minutes until he left. I haven't heard anything since and haven't seen him around, but I wake up at night panicking, thinking that he's planning on doing something to me.